As you learned in your work through the Learn to Program in Playgrounds, there are a lot of things about Swift that are similar to Python, but there are some things that are different too. So you're going to be writing a program that incorporates all of those things that you've learned. I've written an example in case you're just really stuck, and I've also added some things that you didn't learn just because it's interesting and helpful. So I've got a while loop, and I just made mine as a while true. We've used while loops before. The difference, though, of course, is this curly bracket instead of a colon. So the curly bracket means anything inside of this curly bracket is going inside of the while loop. And notice at the very bottom, that's the end of my while loop. There's my curly bracket. Now that's going to be the most difficult part with Swift, is keeping track of when you open and when you close a curly bracket. So I try to keep those in order. So notice my while loop is up here against the left side, and my curly bracket is up against the left side as well. That way I can keep track that I've opened it and closed it. So now in Swift, and you haven't learned this yet, to create a variable means that this is going to change. So this value called count is going to change throughout my program. So I called it a variable. Here's my for loop from 1 to 10. So for increase in 1 through 10, and I called it increase because I'm actually going to add those values, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I'm going to add that to the value called count. So the first time through, count is 0, and then I add on increase. Increase starts as 1, so count plus 1, so now count is equal to 1. The next time through, increase will become 2, so I'm going to take count, which was 1, and I'm going to add 2 to it, so now count becomes 3. And then 3 plus 3 is 6, 6 plus 4 is 10, 10 plus 5 is 15, and so on. This is absolutely something you do not need to use. This is something called mod. We're going to learn a lot about this later. But mod means if I take the value of count, let's say it's 3, and I divide by 2, how much is left over? So 3 divided by 2, 2 goes into 3 one time with 1 left over. And when I divide something by 2, if I don't have a remainder, that means that's an even number. If I do have a remainder, it means it's an odd number. You don't have to use this. I just thought I'd throw it in here. So I'm checking, is count an even number? So is the remainder 0? And, so here's that logical operator, and at the same time, is count greater than 6? If so, this is how I put a variable in a sentence. I say I have a backslash, and then I use the variable called count, and I say that it is an even number that's greater than 6. Okay, now I'm using another logical operator. If that remainder is not 0, in other words, it's odd, and count is greater than 6, then I say count is an odd number greater than 6. Here's my else. It's not greater than 6. Something also you're not going to see in that Playgrounds app is how to get user input. So here I have a print statement. Do you want to see that again? And by using this terminator with a question mark and a space, I'm allowing the user's input to go on the same line as this print statement. Otherwise, we would have a print statement, and then the next line down is where the user would put their answer. It just doesn't look right, in my opinion. So this is saying we're going to get user input, and I'm saying let instead of var. Remember, var was a variable because this value is going to change over and over again because I'm adding increase to it. But start over is just going to be the user's input. It's not going to change, so I made it what's called a constant. I just put the word let in there, meaning this won't change. And read line means get the user's input. Notice the capital L and the parentheses. Finally, and this one's really weird. We will definitely talk about this more later, but just trust me on this right now. When you use user input, you have to use an exclamation point. It's called unwrapping the variable. Don't worry about that right now. Just know that when you test the user's input, you have to have an exclamation point. You have to unwrap it. We'll talk about it more later, I promise. You don't even have to have user input in your program. I just thought it'd be interesting. So if they say anything that is not yes, then I just break my while loop and the whole thing ends. Let me run it one time, show you what I mean. So 1 is not greater than 6, 3 is not greater than 6, 6 is not greater than 6, 10 is even and greater, 15 is odd and greater, and so on and so forth. So now notice, do you want to see it again? And it's giving me the cursor to input my answer right here on the same line. That's what that terminator did. So if I say yes, it does it again. And if I say anything else other than yes, it just ends.